Welcome to another episode of Ruff Talk VR, a weekly podcast with in-depth game reviews, exclusive developer interviews, and the latest MetaQuest and virtual reality news. We join our hosts, the father-son team of D. Scruffles and Stratus today, as they spend another episode breaking down and discussing the world of virtual reality.
Hey, welcome to this episode of Ruff Talk VR. Today we're joined with one familiar face and two new ones. We're joined with Rodolfo from VRAL Games, and then we're also joined with Michael and Nicholas, or as we should go by with Shephard with him.
Right out of the gate.
Of Clarity One, a studio behind an upcoming VR shooter called Exoshock, which for the hardcores of Ruff Talk VR, Exoshock was actually shown off at the end of the Ruff Talk VR gaming showcase last year, our first ever one. And the reception to it was great.
Yeah.
Right off the top.
It's a good amount of gameplay footage, too.
And then maybe a month or two ago, it came out that VRAL had taken some interest in the game in the studio and was getting involved. And we know Rodolfo from right off the top, V-Rider.
Yeah.
Awesome racing game. The only licensed motocross game on the MetaQuest. And, dude, real to the world racing mechanics.
One of the best media. It stays right there too. Don't do an episode without it in arm's reach.
It's always right here.
Not that we're here to talk about V-Rider, but hey,
no,
that's cool.
We want a helmet now. The T-shirt is cool, but we want a helmet.
No, that T-shirt's nice. I won't lie.
Well, then they stepped in with with Squingle going from their previous version that was on App Lab to their full MetaQuest version, or their MetaQuest store on the official store version, and brought a bunch of changes there. So VRAL's gone from, I only knew them as V-Riders, and now they're stamping as a publisher.
I thought that's all that it was going to be.
Yeah.
And then boom, here we are.
No, it seems like we're just getting
This
started.
is awesome, dude.
You all hooked up, so I'm excited. So before we get too crazy, though, because I've already started to fanboy a bit, I went on a whole big tangent there. Rodolfo, Shephard, Nicholas, do you all three want to introduce yourself real quick and maybe tell our listeners, what exactly Exoshock is?
Maybe I'll start. I'll take 1 minute. Just obviously great to see you guys and everybody, your amazing audience. It's a blessing to have these guys on the show with everybody today. You're quickly going to see how passionate, smart, and fun.
Attractive.
Attractive. I'm actually letting my beard grow.
Charismatic.
In honor of Shephard. But this game, I think it fills a void in the space. These guys live and breathe what they're doing. It's kind of it seems like their business, life's work. So I'm just super excited. Yeah, V-Rider was awesome. Actually, V-Rider is going to be ported to PlayStation, PSVR 2 here in May, also for Steam. So that's super exciting. Squingle, we're porting it to Apple Vision Pro. So super excited. But let's pass to these guys, as I'm so happy to have them on the show with everyone today.
Yeah, thank you very much. The like we were talking about earlier, and like you brought up in your intro, is that we really appreciated the recognition that you guys provided to us in your showcase last year. That was still, we were very unproven at that time, kind of an unknown factor, and so having that opportunity to kind of for people to see what we were working on was a big deal for us. That recognition kind of gave us some validation as to what we've been working on in our free time. So really appreciate that. That was a while ago now, and there's a lot we can say, of course, about the time period since then, and we'll get into that. But as far as introductions, my name is Nicholas. I've been interested into VR literally since the Oculus Kickstarter, and even back in the Oculus developer kit days, before there was any kind of consumer VR headsets available, I didn't get it directly from the source, but I purchased a developer kit secondhand and started learning how to use that. I wasn't making games at that point in 2015. I'd started learning Unreal Engine and game development at that point, but just using the device was already immensely difficult. It's, there's so much that we take for granted now. And especially prior to any consumer headsets, things were substantially more jank and technical just to get a basic. There'd be many there. As an anecdote, there'd be many times I'd bring people over, like I'd bring friends over and make an event out of it to like show them virtual reality. And then it like wouldn't run the application because of some like runtime error and all sorts of version compatibility issues. It was a very different time than things have progressed drastically in so many ways since then. So that's amazing. So anyways, that's kind of where like I haven't been a professional in the space the entire time. That's more of a recent development thanks to VRAL Games, but it's something that I've been working on and learning game development and learning virtual reality development, playing VR games, essentially from the beginning, at least given this last decade, this last generation. I wasn't there in the 80s and 90s for the first one, but it's something that I've been extremely passionate about and I wanted to make a career out of. There was a lot of games that I wanted to make, and obviously everybody has to start somewhere when it comes to doing your solo projects. So those first handful of years weren't really anything to brag about, but that's all what kind of led into eventually meeting Shephard and starting on what at the time we were calling Boarding Party, but later pivoted to calling it Exoshock, which is much cooler.
It still says Boarding Party in my files, like my folder that has all my files in it. It says Boarding Party on it. I'm never going to change that.
So, and we'll get into like how we all met and how that project got started, but the essentially we had like the shortest form of it, especially at that time, is I had a certain desire for kind of how I wanted the VR shooter genre to go. There was certain kind of experiences and sensations that I didn't think that it was delivering on. Anything that was like yes, there was some great stuff. Like I had like 400 hours in Pavlov, for example, especially back in like 2018 or so. And so that's kind of what got me inspired. But from the very beginning, I didn't have the skills to do it. But I definitely had the desire to start to take that farther. And that's kind of what ended up turning into Boarding Party Exoshock, is that desire to kind of evolve that genre, especially now, even years later. There definitely is like innovation in the space, but things have solidified more. There are more kind of standardized expectations, and that's kind of what we're trying to modify. Anyways, go ahead, Shephard.
Augment, enhance.
Yep.
And Mr. Shephard, who are you?
So I am sort of the art guy on the team, and I'm a gamer going way back, including shooters, but RPGs. I love fantasy and sci-fi gaming, and I love computer PC gaming, console gaming. I love pen and paper RPGs. I love the books, movies, just all of that stuff. And so I've been doing that sort of as an illustrator, as a sort of 2D artist. I was doing that for a long time. I got my art degree doing 2D illustration with sort of fantasy illustration. And I did do some game work as a 2D artist, but it was never. The only place you could get paid to do games was frequently stuff where it was a game you'd never want to play. And that's just such a sad place for an artist to end up, for any game developer to end up. And I think that's a lot of the business is you make the product you're paid to make. And I have always wanted to work on a product that I would want to play. And so this is kind of like, meeting Nicholas. We both were very passionate about game development. We both have, we mesh really well in terms of our standards for gaming and what we think games can be or should be. And we sort of, when we see a game that we think could be better, or we see an experience that we think could be better, or we see experiences that we like and we want to get more of that, we just have a confidence that we can make that happen. So we kind of connected on that. We were doing kind of a side project. And then he reached out to me and was like, you want to work on this project? And he got me kind of interested in VR because you guys and Nicholas, you guys are the groundbreakers of the VR world, of the VR community. I'm a kind of a latecomer to it. And so he got me interested in it by saying, hey, like, do you want to make a VR game? I was like, that sounds cool. I liked working with you. So we started working on this thing. And I think at the time we were just kind of like, let's just start working on this and see where it goes. And it just kind of kept becoming a cooler and cooler project. And it kept becoming the project in my life. And, as the time moved on and it just kind of took over the space from almost all of my other personal projects. And the more we worked on it, the more we were like, this isn't just a side project. This is a real game. This needs to be a real game. And so we just kept working on it and kept showing it to whoever would talk to us. And, finally then, connecting with VRAL was where we managed to switch from, just basically spending all of our free time doing it to now being able to work on it full time. And we're just really excited by the opportunity that we're going to be able to do it justice and create. I mean, I'm excited as an artist, as a world builder, to be able to create a world that I think is really cool, that is full of like the kinds of environments and the enemies and the guns and the gear that excite me as a gamer and as a fantasy sci-fi post-apocalyptic genre enthusiast. There's just so much there. So that's where I come from. I think is that a good enough introduction?
That's solid all around from all three of you. I do have to give a correction that I have to apologize for, because I'm notorious for if I mess up a name once, like at one point we had called 11 table tennis Elvin table tennis, and we just started saying it out of a joke at one point. I even brought it up on a recording one day. So I said VRAL Games. Sorry, it's VRAL Games. My apologies there. Thank you for that correction. During your introductions, you guys slipped it in real slick and smooth.
Non-humiliatingly too. That was nice.
Right?
Appreciate that.
Definitely make sure to say the correct name.
VRAL Games, you douche.
I think I could have called it VRAL just now. Viral. I gotta get on brand. He's wearing a t-shirt with my game on it. I should be able to pronounce it.
Viral. It's a silent E. It's a silent E.
Okay. It's great to see, though. I mean, when we first started the podcast, there were publishers in the VR sphere, but a lot of them did their own, they were publishing their own in-house stuff, or, Fast Travel had just started really publishing, third-party things. And Dreams were starting to test the waters there, but it wasn't in abundance. Now, I feel like we have a surviving ecosystem of publishers like VRAL Games out here.
It's a necessity, though.
As you see, that you guys said it yourselves, it goes from like, hey, we can work on our free time, to like, no, here's the resources. We're all invested. Like, the only way this works out for any of us is if the game does good. So it's in all of our interest and
to have that voice that believes in whatever it is you're working on, as much, or in some cases more than you do.
To put the money where the mouth is and go, here you go, let's do it.
It's got to feel pretty damn like. So I got to know, before we get into exactly what the game is, right? For those who didn't watch the showcase last year, how big is the studio? Is it literally the two of you?
Three. One other guy.
Love it.
Awesome. Nope. Love that.
That's perfect.
Some of the smaller studios make some of the best experiences. So
what's the third guy do?
He's a multiplayer
he's kind of our engineer, our most technical team member. He's helped us pretty substantially with rebuilding a lot of the core technology and gameplay mechanics, especially in regards to multiplayer. We've essentially rebuilt, between the two of us, we've rebuilt the entire game from the ground up, mostly because I did all of the programming for what was seen last year and what was eventually on SideQuest. And while I'm proud of that, I'm more of a technical artist. And a lot of that technology wasn't set up in a way that was going to be very sustainable or scalable and all sorts of other things. And most importantly, was not at all going to work with multiplayer in any capacity. So the game, in order to support multiplayer, was always going to require a rebuild. So as more of a technical artist, he's been our technical expert and really helped kind of push a lot of those most difficult tasks. He does what I refer to as like the real work when it comes to the programming and really engineering type matters, or like server infrastructure, and making sure that we absolutely could not be doing this without him.
Evan Fedorovich is
Yes.
our multiplayer specialist and just all around just sort of like technical specialist when it comes to VR, technical specialist when it comes to Unreal Engine. And he's got a lot of experience with all of those things. And so he'll be at GDC with us, and he is a core part of this process. But yes, it's us two, and with the funding, we now have a third dedicated team member, and we all just wear a lot of hats, a lot of hats.
So it's twice I've heard Unreal come up.
Yeah.
Is your game Unreal or Unity?
Mm-hmm. There's a little caveat in their press release that, oh man, if you had read it, I'm sure they'll mention it. Yeah, you're gonna get real excited in a moment.
Okay. So that is the question.
Well, yeah, I don't know what the caveat is, but yeah, we're moving in. We developed the original project, the kind of free time version in Unreal Engine 4, 4.27, and during that is when Unreal Engine 5 launched. And so when we were doing this whole rebuild, that was kind of an opportunity to upgrade our technology and make sure that we're staying compatible with modern stuff, and a lot of other things. And so we moved into Unreal Engine 5, but I think I've mentioned somewhere that it's when there's a bit of a stigma currently going on with, at least online, with things like Unreal Engine 5, and we aren't necessarily doing all of we're not utilizing all of the new features and Lumen and Nanite and that kind of stuff. Because at the end of the day, we're still running on Quest Standalone, which is essentially mobile hardware. So most of that isn't necessarily relevant. And generally, I will resist the temptation now, but regarding the technology driving the game, I could rant about forever. But there's a lot of aspects to it that we do in kind of our own way. And that custom technology is what enables us to do a lot of things that we can do. So we are in Unreal Engine 5, but not necessarily in the way that people would expect.
Yeah, the part I was referencing was the upgrade to Unreal 5.
No,
He's a big Unreal fanboy.
Yeah,
big fan.
To me, it means a lot when you see that logo and you load up a game. It's like there is a certain expectation that comes of how this game's going to perform. So
and look and such.
Especially relative
it can look
to
as good as your system,
Yeah, and that's kind of changed over the history of the industry. And you're right that there's definitely seems like there's always been a higher quantity of Unity VR games, especially in the early days. But yeah, I've always done my development that entire time in Unreal, and I'm not gonna make it an engine conversation because I don't really care about that. But you use the tools that work for you to do what you need to accomplish.
I like Unreal a lot. I tried to use Unity, and I understand that Unity is sort of the gold standard for the VR development. I want us to change that. Not that Unity needs to be sidelined, but I want Unreal to be as much of a VR tool as Unity, and I think that players will benefit from that, and devs will benefit from that.
I will totally agree with that.
Some of our favorite games, Ghost of Tabor, Grim.
There's levels to everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and there's limitations to everything, but I would think the max limitation on Unity for graphics on a Quest is going to look better. I mean, the Unreal graphics on a Quest maxed out to whatever the Quest can handle will look better than Unity graphics maxed out, right? I mean,
I'm not the expert to ask that. We'll save the engine discussion for another one. But I don't think we've gotten too much into it besides some references that it's a shooter. So do you all want to tell our listeners?
I don't know.
Yeah, how would you describe Exoshock in your own words?
Yeah, so there's Exoshock is a big part of it is kind of revolutionizing the fundamentals. It's not necessarily about having you've got a grappling hook and you fly around like Spider-Man or anything regarding a specific mechanic. It's more so in every aspect of the world and the narrative and the gameplay, we're trying to do something different and original. And even with something like a VR shooter, after all these years and a lot of the games that are out there, yet another VR shooter is in and of itself is more than worthy of a bit of an eye roll as far as these guys are doing another VR shooter. How innovative can that be? What can be different about that? And kind of everything can be different. And so the actual game itself is both a single player and a cooperative VR shooter where you're boarding hostile spaceships. You can think of games like 40K, what's it called? Oh, man. Essentially, we have like a drop pod, and you're assaulting an enemy ship, full of hostiles. They've got their defenses in depth. They've got their barricades. They've got their sentry turrets. And then you have semi-procedural objectives depending on, like, for the OGs out there, essentially, when it comes to VR, a big part of it was, I'm forgetting what the game was called. Not After the Fall. Essentially, there was a game that had like some FTL mechanics. I'd have to pull up my meta library to remember what it's even called. 1 second. This is important.
The one inspiration.
From Other Suns.
Oh, yeah.
From Other Suns. Speaking for myself.
Classic. Heard great things about
that's like 8 years ago. That's what my library says. 8 years ago. And that was like the first of many inspirations where essentially you had kind of an FTL style bridge where you could get into some basic space combat. But then the primary aspect of the game was boarding these space stations, and especially during these space battles, being able to board the enemy vessel. The limitation with the game, there were things that were awesome about it, but the actual combat itself was very flat. There were many other aspects that were super cool, but immediately when I was playing the game, I was like, man, I wish this action of boarding these spaceships and destroying their systems and like completing these objectives on these space stations. The graphics were awesome. The world was sweet. The interactions were great, but just the combat itself wasn't really landing. It wasn't meeting kind of like, even at the time, the VR shooter expectations for the kind of VR shooter specific games. Anyways, I bring that up because it's kind of the best point of reference as to how the original idea kind of got started, which was, what if From Other Suns had awesome FPS mechanics? What if it had awesome combat? What could that be? And that's kind of what started everything. And so now with kind of the modern version of Exoshock, you've got you and your team. Obviously, you're setting up your loadout ahead of time, kind of similar to like Helldivers, Deep Rock Galactic, and a lobby type space. And then you're able to choose between multiple objectives, similar to both of those, or not objectives, multiple mission variants similar to both of those games, in order to kind of tailor the level of complexity and the level of challenge that you're looking for. You've got multiple different kinds of factions and different types of mission objectives. And so looking at this mission board, looking at what's available, what kind of team you're working with, depending on like who's online, you also have your AI companions. And so you can have that kind of team versus team experience, regardless of whether or not you're alone. You've got one friend, you've got, 4 friends or 3 friends. And then you have actually boarding the hostile ship. And the way that we're kind of doing it is we have different ship floor plans, different models of ships. And so it's not procedurally generated necessarily. The overall kind of frame, the overall structure of these ship classes, like this Epsilon destroyer, that overall frame will be relatively consistent regarding like where the reactor is, where the cargo hold is, where berthing is, but all of the details in between, not necessarily the quarters, but where the enemy positions are, their defensive positions, what objectives you're going to have to complete, all of that stuff is dynamic. And so, especially when it comes to things like the AI and the actual moment-to-moment combat, that's something that can be very unpredictable. And so, having something where we still have the handcrafted elements as far as a handcrafted environment and these great locations that are designed for awesome visuals and awesome gameplay, rather than fully relying on randomness or procedural algorithms to create that consistent experience. But then it's in the details that everything is constantly changing. And so there's a lot of replayability there where there are games that have, even like Left 4 Dead as an older style game, you have these kind of linear maps, and Left 4 Dead has amazing replayability. But even with that game, the maps themselves, you're always kind of going through the same linear path. And we wanted to kind of expand on that, where in the case of Left 4 Dead, where you have a linear path and then all these dynamic systems with things like the director and how the special infected spawn, We wanted to take that a little farther regarding the level design. We're still keeping all the dynamic systems with we don't necessarily call it the director, but we have an AI manager that handles things like spawning patrols, spawning reinforcements, populating rooms with enemies, but we wanted to have the actual levels not be these linear tracks that you would go through and be more omnidirectional, more like fully detailed ship interiors that have a lot of different, like you've got these main corridors, you've got these maintenance tunnels, you have a lot of different kind of navigational opportunities, and the navigation is a mechanic itself. And as far as how that develops, we're still working on. But having to navigate these spaces under pressure, under fire, is an aspect of the gameplay. And so, anyways, having these overall like ship floor plans, having these semi-procedural objectives and challenges and enemy spawning, and even like the enemies themselves, in this rebuilding process, they're able to coordinate as a squad. In the old game, they would be just like individual units, and people had a great experience with those firefights, but the enemies didn't have any ability to coordinate, as to where now they actually have like a leadership structure. And so if you eliminate a leader, if another leader is available, they can fall back to those leaders. But there's, and even things like enemy variety, it's not just like some games where you have just a single kind of soldier enemy that you just fight over and over and over and over again. It's much more kind of that sci-fi fantasy element of guys that are, running at you with melee weapons and shotguns, and you've got large heavy units. And we're trying to really evolve that whole combat space from just two dudes shooting at each other with guns into something that's much more dynamic and strategic, and where there's decisive decisions that are having to be made. So anyways, I know I said a lot there. I wasn't scripted, obviously.
No, I mean, dude, that's how I wish developers would explain their game. When I go, tell me about your game, it's like that was top to down. Great
I
run
can talk about it forever.
I see Nick almost as the doctor of FPS shooters. It's part tactician, part PhD. It's amazing to hear him describe the genre, and I think how him and Shephard have thought of game design and like the visceral battle tactical feeling of coming together and like intelligently using AI so it's fun and replayable. It's pretty amazing, like when we met these guys, there's always a thought of you want to bet in on the horse but then on the jockey, because sometimes you bet on the right horse but it's the wrong jockey, or the right jockey and it's the wrong horse. I think here with Exoshock and the more these guys speak, that's why I'm basically not speaking too much today, because I really want everyone in VR and gaming to hear them and their kind of their passion and attention to detail of what the players actually are asking for. Is like it seems there's a bit of a void in this particular kind of sci-fi, PvE co-op shooter, and I think Exoshock is really working really, really hard to make this amazing. And for everyone out there, if you look at, if you follow their Discord, which I highly recommend, these guys are building the game in the open, and that's incredible. And for me, as one of the guys here voting to invest, we're three co-founders at VRAL. But my question was, are they building this in the open? Because I think that's amazing, because there's almost like there's no hiding. If you're a hardcore shooter, go to their Discord, see their daily interaction of how they're doing this. So it's amazing. I love that description. Some of it is highly technical, which is good, because I know developers out there will respect and enjoy. So those are some quick thoughts there.
Let me give you guys a kind of a lore based kind of rundown of it. I mean, the thing is that like the technical side of it, that's what we care about as devs, and that's what we're putting into the game, and that's what we see that is missing from a lot of games.
Technical as in like the details,
the details
where the rubber meets the road kind of stuff, rather than idealistic.
Mhm.
So that's what's going to be once you get in the game. Once we've got you locked in the game, then there's going to be all of this like this meat on the bone that all this intelligent AI, all these incredible like sort of like experiences from the sort of lore perspective, from the sense of like what you're getting yourself into. This is a intense co-op experience. You come in, there will be single player. Single player is always going to be available. I tend, as a gamer, to be a single player person, so I demand that for our game. But the core vision, the big vision, is multiplayer. You jump in, you've got your team. There's a little bit of pre-mission prep, but not much. You're grabbing the guns you want. You're figuring out your loadout. You're doing last-minute customization, maybe for the suit upgrade that you want, and then you all jump into the mission. You get in the drop ship, and you land, and you're just up against real challenges. Not necessarily in the sense of like it's a game that is really difficult to play, but it's a game that really sort of like pushes you to be there and to be present, and doesn't let you rest on your heels, because you're in there. You're in this crazy dark spaceship. You've got the sound design sort of just pushes you into this place of being like, it feels hostile. It feels like you're in a hostile environment. It feels like you need to be on your toes. Mm-hmm. And then you get into these encounters with enemies, and like everything is telling you that you need to grip your gun and you need to be on it. And then we give you the tools to fight back, right? We give you different weapons, and we give you grenades and healing syringes, and it all feels just really present and immersive. And that's what we want to do. We want to present, that's what VR has to offer, is that it really can put you inside the game. Mm-hmm. And we want you to forget that you're playing a game. We want you to feel like you are on this spaceship, deep in hostile territory, and that you and your team have to coordinate together to get to the next objective, and to get to the objective after that, and to clear out any enemies in your way, and then to get back to your drop ship and get the hell out of there. Mm-hmm. And that's what we want you focused on. And that's what we as players, we want to be that immersed in a game. When we're in a game, we want to feel that immersed. So that's the experience that we're hoping to deliver. And the AI, like all that technical stuff, when it comes to really thinking about like, how do the AI work together? Because if you get into a game and it's just a zombie shooter, or you just have the same bullet sponges that you're just dumping ammo into, it's players know when that's the experience that is being delivered to them. And it's very different to go up against an enemy that you really have to strategize and think about, like, oh, they were there, but now I think they're flanking me, and I need my teammate to throw a grenade that way, so that I need this guy to give me some cover fire. All of that comes together to an experience that I think really, like, that sort of white knuckle puts you in the game. And again, we're not trying to make something that is so hardcore that only the most like intense, players can handle it. That's not what we're doing. It's the experience of intensity. It's that experience of like that gripping experience, that kind of cinematic suspense feeling. And we've already delivered that in our demo with pretty minimal AI, like good AI, but minimal AI. And now that we're doing this full time, we're creating systems that are going to be.
Yeah, and it's regarding the intensity versus like hardcore nature. We aren't like, we're making a hardcore shooter in the sense that people who are interested in the genre, who have experience in it and are wanting something more, both experientially from a moment to moment standpoint, but also something with more replayability and more depth. That's kind of more when we talk about like trying to appeal to a hardcore shooter fan. Hardcore, not necessarily in the sense of like milsim, or there's like the tactical shooter genre, which is that's different than what we're trying to do. The game is tactical, and we use that word, but tactical in the sense of you need to make tactical decisions from a moment to moment standpoint. Not necessarily tactical in the sense of it takes one shot to die and you drop everything you have on you, and it's like extremely unforgiving. We're trying to do this very interesting and difficult balance of offering something that's extremely intense and visceral, and where that moment to moment gameplay is the most intense VR shooter, the most visceral, the most tactile you've ever experienced, and taking that farther and allowing you to experience it over and over and over again because of that replayability, because of that depth, and turn that, because obviously there's a lot of VR games out there that offer a moment, an experience, but it's just a moment. It's not really something you can come back to and put 100, 200, 400 hours into. And so that's what, as we're developing our workflows and as we're trying to create systems that create variety and create replayability and create reward, that's something where the most important thing to me especially is that 30 seconds, that kind of like Halo 1, Halo 2 style 30 seconds of fun focus of just making that as enjoyable, as engaging as physically possible. And then giving you a justification to do that 30 seconds over and over and over again.
No, I mean, that's so many games. Like, that's Helldivers. That's what we love about Helldivers.
Right. And so that's kind of where it can be kind of tough where, we don't necessarily, like, we have a lot of details. We have a lot of technology that we can brag about. But it isn't like a one core feature. It's more so in all aspects. We're trying to take things to a new level of intensity, not difficulty, just intensity as in, like, Shepherd and I both align with the idea of like virtual reality. It's relatively cumbersome. It's more of a commitment to get into a game, and it's something where you're invested in that moment in time. And as developers and as people who are creating experiences for this medium, it's important to us that it be respectful of your time. And, if you're going to bother putting on the headset, you're already kind of indebted to the player, not just with them buying the game and downloading it and doing so many other things more than other mediums. They've put so much into being there to try your game that you have to deliver, and you have to deliver immediately. It's not something where you can dilly dally, and like, it needs to be something that's amazing in the first few minutes. First 15 minutes. Like, yes, you can have a tutorial, maybe you can do an introduction or whatever, but to do something like 45 minutes before the game gets good. And there's a lot of games that do that with like traditional games. There's many games out there where, you got to get through the tutorial, or you got to get through the first 20 hours and then it's fun. Absolutely not. We're talking 20 seconds. Like, as immediately amazing as it can be is really essential to us, just because you're already asking so much for somebody to put on a VR headset that every single minute they spend in there, it doesn't need to be all white knuckle, not because it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And that's something we've been working on, is having dynamics. We obviously don't want things to be, 110% intense for the entire 1 or 2 hours, but it's really important to us that moment to moment experience is just completely locked in and unlike anything else. And and that's kind of where, while I'm oftentimes more focused on things like the gameplay or the AI or the weapon mechanics, that's something where Shepherd's always working on the environment and the visuals and the character designs and creating. That's something that we really wanted to offer differently, was having a unique world. Not necessarily just doing like a modern shooter, not necessarily just like referencing other kind of IP. Yes, we have a lot of inspirations, and people can point to, this reminds me of this media, or this reminds me of this franchise. Definitely. But it's important to us to offer something that had an original identity and an original experience really across the board. And so that's kind of where the whole team comes together to create something that's unique in all of the details.
All three of us.
Right. Definitely. Anyways.
I mean, I love PvP. PvP has a big role in the VR market, but some of my most replayed experiences are PvE games. Like, of course, you said there's a bunch of games you compare this to, flat screen VR and such, and this definitely does something unique. But like Dungeons of Eternity is a game that will run endlessly because it does randomly generated dungeons. It's PvE. we can go in there on the way too hard of difficulty mode and just have a blast. And we still play it to this day. If this has kind of procedurally generated missions, it almost sounds like a guns version of Dungeons of Eternity, which is a fantastic comparison, in my opinion, because it's one of the best games on the VR market. So,
yeah, it's definitely a fair comparison. It's something that people have brought up before. I've put maybe a dozen or so hours into that game, and it's more than that. But if you were to take something like is it Dungeons of Eternity? We always want to say Pillars of Eternity, which is a different game, I think. If you were to take something like that, but then you add in kind of the Pavlov, Onward, Ghosts of Tabor type stuff, those types of mechanics and that gear and that progression. I think there's something really cool there, and we're definitely kind of dipping into that idea.
Well, I'm liking that you've emphasized, like, we haven't made this impossible. You don't have to be the top 1% gamer to be able to complete this, but it sounds like you're creating this overall experience without making it extremely difficult that might put a little, like, I don't know, emotional stress or, some spiritual stress, something on you to help add to. So it's kind of its own level of difficulty. If you do a sound well, if you do the environment well, a game doesn't have to be impossibly hard to be very difficult just because of the world and situation you're in. I mean, you have me excited.
Yeah,
legit. I'm like,
I almost wish I was going to GD. Well, for plenty of reasons, I wish I was going to GDC.
Full disclosure, I've not played this game. I have no hands-on experience with saying. Otherwise,
you're dying to try it too. You're like, can we try it before then?
Well, the more I hear like the way that it's been put together, it has me really intrigued, because one thing we always say is, like, what new element is someone bringing to the table? It can be a genre that's maxed out. I don't care. Rhythm games, there's no shortage of them. If you bring something new, I'm going to have some attention to it.
And there's no real PvE mission, like endless mission running game like this in VR. So I think this would be.
I think this has a lot of potential to do. I mean, obviously,
Adolfo agrees.
Yeah, and I wonder, like,
and we're glad that he does.
How hard of a conversation really was it? I mean, if I was investing and I listened to both of you talk, and I was like, all right, these gentlemen are in deep. This is not like skipping a stone. This is like we got the boat way out.
It's right. So I think here, obviously credit is to both of these guys, and then Evan that joined them as well. But you listen to them, and then we saw that very early kind of version, and we are so impressed by what it could be. But then you start talking to both of these guys, and you're like, okay, they're really serious. They know what they're talking about. They love the space. And, at VRAL, we kind of have packaged this concept, but it's more than a concept, but sometimes concepts are good to understand, which we call, power to the devs. GameStop has had, power to the players. And then obviously, as you guys know, two of my co-founders, Massimo and Joe Victor, they had grown GameStop in Italy to like 500, Italy and Spain to like 500 stores. So they know the industry. And then we came up with this concept, power to the devs. And when you meet them, you're like, yeah, we can give ideas and, monetization concepts and discussions and maybe some of that insight. But at the end of the day, it's the power to the devs that are so passionate to create something that can be hopefully loved by a lot of people that are just going to create memories, and the more as we gear up to go to GDC now, we're going to have a pretty cool booth. It's double the size from last year, which we were tiny. We only had V-Rider. Now we have 4 games and Exo. I suggest maybe we should put a link here on the video at the bottom. You can pre-sign up to get a demo to play Exoshock, at the booth. It's filling up super fast. So the link is there. These guys will actually give you the tour of the demo. You're going to be able to play, if everything works correctly, 2 players simultaneously at the booth, which would be brilliant. So for us, it was just amazing, and then you're trying to package your product, or obviously in this case, a game, to hopefully fill a void where people really want a type of game that fills the void. And I think Exoshock crosses all the boxes. But I always say, at the end of the day, the tribe has to speak, which is, the gamers that, who played this game will speak. And obviously, all the behind closed doors, people who have played the game and things like that, it's going to be amazing. So super excited to have everyone meet these guys at the show. So the conversations on our side, obviously, are these guys amazing? Do you see, and I think we talked about this before, from our standpoint, is this an IP that can last 10 years?
Yeah.
Is this like a real IP where you can create something amazing that just keeps giving and keeps growing and keep adding? And maybe we should, I know you guys are leading the podcast, but it would be interesting just to hit, like, to talk about maybe like 2 minutes on their vision of what this IP can become. It's amazing. Again, guys, don't give all the secrets away, because
Yeah, but we're thinking in terms of Doom and Halo. We think this could really grow, and we think that it could kind of like grow alongside the VR industry, right? And we do think that it provides some new things. By the way, just as a clarification, for GDC, we're hoping to have 2-person multiplayer, but at launch we'll have a full 4-person team. Okay. So we do think that this does actually bring some new things, but we also feel like VR needs as many, AAA experiences as possible. Big, epic, incredible, awesome, games, even if it's in, genres that aren't necessarily, making, totally new leaps into VR experience, even if it's just an amazing FPS game, even if it's just like, what Doom and Halo did for PC, that is something that the VR world needs. That's what we believe. And we think that Exoshock has the capacity. We think that it can provide the experience because we know we can provide that experience. But then also it's kind of got this potential space to become more and more. And we have so many ideas in terms of like factions and, earning, upgrades and getting new mission types and getting new environment types. And to some degree, it's sort of like we're hoping to grow it as the technology grows. Right now, we kind of are designing Exoshock instead of trying to figure out like, oh, okay, well, here's a PC experience. How do we port this to VR? We're like, okay, what is VR good at? What is, Quest standalone good at? And how can we create a game that works within that? But then Quest is going to, Quest standalone and other VR platforms, the possibilities are going to grow, and what we can put into a game are going to grow. And as that grows, with, add-ons to Exoshock or Exoshock sequels, we want to be able to build it up and like, right now you're just going onto ships, but it may be at some future date that you're able to go onto a whole planet or something like that, or you're going onto a space station or some alien city. The sky is kind of the limit in terms of where we can take this, and we're really excited about it. Like when we're talking behind the scenes, we're spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to make this first launch amazing. But we also can't help ourselves, and we're talking about like, okay, what comes next, right? What is next, and what could we do to make this world big enough to be just like kind of endless and have just have it kind of open up and have people, earn places in this world and break into new spaces in this world. And for us as devs, that's exciting, especially as an artist. Like the idea of like, oh, okay, right now we've got, some, 3 or 4 factions, and we've got some pirate, maybe we'll have a pirate faction, a military faction, but what are all the other things that are happening in this dystopian, universe, that we can have people experience? And that's our plan. That's our goal for sure.
Can I pre-invest in the movie rights?
Right. Right.
Merch and movie rights. I'll just take 2% of them. I'm good, man.
So I love the passion on this game as well. Like you said earlier, I wish we were going to GDC to try this. So for anyone going to GDC, you all are demoing it at a booth there. How can somebody book a slot there if they're looking to participate in that demo?
Yeah, for sure. So you can join, Exoshock's Discord. You can go to their website. There will be a link to book there. You can contact Impact Reality, who is one of our partners, in also kind of telling the industry about the game. You can go to the VRALGames.com website, and all those links will be there where you can sign up for the demo. Those are some call to actions there.
We will also be trying to get we'll have an invite only early access that will be coming after GDC. And so that was
going to be my next question.
Yeah. We're very excited to share with people going to GDC, but obviously that's a very narrow slice of the population.
Yeah.
If you get on our Discord, we will have information, and we'll probably be putting this out on social media stuff. But we're kind of like, as a dev team, Discord is where we exist. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the stuff happens there. But we want to get people who are really excited to try this included in early access, and it'll be sort of alpha gameplay. We want to get feedback. That's kind of one of the main things we want to get is feedback so that we can iterate and then make sure that everything is just amazing by the point when launch happens. But it'll already be really cool, even by the early access. And so that's a real possibility to get in on this. And then I think we'll also have early access sort of internal play testing, and then we'll actually have, official early access, which will be available on the Quest store, I believe.
Yeah.
But that's a couple months out, whereas the internal play testing, invite only, that's going to be happening in the next 2 or 3 months, I think.
Well, if you're at GDC, definitely book a slot. And
potential to burn some servers.
Yeah, go hop in that Discord.
I can feel that.
Go hop in that Discord. I'll throw a link for the Discord in the show notes to the episode description. So anyone who wants to join, just look there and definitely go check that out. I'll be in there. I want to stay up to date on the latest.
Yeah, man.
With this one, so I'm excited to hop in. You all did a great job telling us maybe like some of the best I've ever heard.
Well,
developers.
All developers have a passion for what they do, right?
Oh my goodness,
but
it was oozing. The passion was oozing.
Yeah,
like you could.
It's undeniable that the thought has gone into it. Future lore has gone into it. Mm-hmm. We already know there's a movie if they wanted to do it. That's into it. Comic book you could do. It's like
let's talk.
Yeah. we don't get to talk about this stuff to anybody like enough. So when we get the opportunity, it's sort of just it all comes tumbling out.
I love it.
No, it's good because it's genuine. I don't feel like you were trying to BS anyone.
Like a sales pitch, like a sales
I'm trying
slide
to sell my game. No, it's like legit. This is your personal excitement,
Also, it's the kind of game where when you play even 2 minutes of it, you'll know if I'm exaggerating, if we're putting our money where our mouth is. And everybody who's played it so far has been impressed. And
it's a special game. It's a special game.
Ooh,
so I dare you to play it when we get to a demo. I dare you to play it. And if you,
we're also not there's plenty of developers, there's plenty of teams and studios that have a lot of big ideas, and yes, we do have those for sure. But something that's always kind of been special about our approach is that when we're encountered with a challenge or we think that something might be able to be improved upon, we never just pat ourselves in the back for having a good idea and move on with our lives. It's something where we have to find out, we have to test it. We have to prototype it. We have to see if it works. And that's the case too with Exoshock, is that it's an expression of how we think things can be done differently and an experience that we think that can be offered that isn't offered anywhere else. And it isn't just a list of good ideas necessarily. It's all in the execution of it, and relevant to like building a community and getting playtesters and stuff in. Yes, we have a vision. Yes, we are executing on the literal development. But it is absolutely essential that we get people's feedback. And like, and even like we wouldn't be where we are today if we hadn't gotten people's feedback, last year. And like the brief time we had like a side quest demo that was available for like 2 months or something. But especially going into the near future and following, it's absolutely essential that we get people's like that their genuine critiques, their genuine feedback, so that we can not only resolve the technical issues, but there are aspects of the experience that we feel really confident about, but there's also aspects that aren't entirely determined, and we would really benefit from people's experiences with other titles, and things like progression, but also like you talked about with the difficulty. We're not at all we're trying to make an intense and visceral game, not trying to necessarily make an extremely unforgiving, difficult, challenging game. It is challenging, but not like brutally challenging. And so, but that's a really difficult thing to do for any game. And that's why things like the playtesting and early access and stuff are important, is so that we can get as many types of people playing the game as possible. Yes, it'd be kind of a focus on people who have like prior experience with VR shooters, and people who want that kind of experience and want more will kind of be drawn. But it's like, as a personal tiny anecdote, it's always been important to me that my elderly uncle will be able to play the game with me. He's like 70 plus years old. He's not very good at most video games, but him and I always have an amazing time playing together. And it's something that I know that he would love to play together. And that's something I want to be able to offer him. And so there's a lot of ways we're doing that, that I won't rant about here, but it's a difficult challenge to say, hey, I want to satisfy and evolve people's expectations who have 1,000 hours or more in VR shooters, while also allowing my elderly uncle to be able to join in that same experience. That sounds impossible. It sounds, but
Nick, and I'll spend 1 minute on this. So the more I'm reflecting as we gear up to go to GDC, I try to kind of remember why I like the genre. And there's two main reasons. So one of those, I went to Cornell in New York in my first year. My freshman, we were living in an apartment, and there were like 4 suites. And then 2 of these guys were total IT nerds. I mean, so they connected all of our computers, and we would play Doom. And we would come from class, and these guys would put these big speakers out of the window. So as we got out of the bus, we could hear just all the blasting. Everyone were like, okay, it's Doom time. So that kind of sedimented that feeling that was amazing. It was just like, it's one of my best memories of the freshman year. It was wild, and the intensity, that feeling was amazing. And then the other one was, my brother was a huge gamer. Like playing Halo. You're saying hundreds of hours. Alexis played thousands, and I tried to play with him, but he was just so good and stuff like that. So I think, Exoshock can possibly, and I know that that's kind of your intention, become one of these genre games for VR that creates these feelings and memories. And at the end of the day, I know that, and I'm a bit older than you guys. Brian and we might be competing, but but it's when you get older, these are the games and experiences, and because it's multiplayer now. I mean, we were 4 guys in a dorm, but now you can be anywhere. So I think if we're able to really get to the hearts of the players, that they can create these incredible memories and experiences, this will be so much fun. My son is 6.5. So I'm actually excited. And I have to look at the settings, but for Liam and I to create those memories together on this, maybe he might have to be a little older, but again, and I'll stop there. But I do think that this game has this power of creating this feeling for this VR generation, which would be amazing. How rewarding is that? So I'll stop there.
Separate to like the games, separate to Exoshock, it's like that was like something that was important to me, where I kind of come from the Halo 2, Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare, Gears of War, Left 4 Dead, that Xbox 360 generation. And obviously there's always going to be an element of nostalgia, but I really want that for VR. I want those, and I want that for gaming as a whole. For those types of like as Shephard said, like meat on the bone experiences that are just like generation defining, which I'm not necessarily trying to say, I don't know. I'm always trying to balance out my like humility with my arrogance. But what I do want as a gamer, as a player, as a VR evangelist, I just fantasize about things like Halo 2, Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare, Gears of War, Left 4 Dead, those types of games. What if those types of experiences, not literally copy paste the IP, that's a whole other conversation. I just mean those types of generation defining experiences. What if those, and there is some of that in VR, definitely. But why can't we have that? And some of there are reasons and resources and that kind of stuff. But to even have an opportunity to attempt to be going in that direction and be able to even attempt to provide that type of experience for the virtual reality medium is a big part of the drive, especially for myself. That's kind of where there's so much opportunity in the medium. And we think, and Shephard and I definitely, and VRAL Games totally agree that there's so much potential that it's also, the medium is too young to already have issues of like old dog and new tricks. Like, I get it. You want to have standardization and you want to have like, what do you call it? Like, things will solidify to an extent. It's a real industry now. It's no longer just people in their basements. It's a real thing. It's a real self-sustaining industry to an extent. But to say that the rules have all been written and this is the way that things have to be and should be and will always be, any of that I think is ridiculous. And so that's kind of where, Shephard and I, we want to challenge those rules and we want to make some new ones.
And we want to dream big. We're just going to dream big because we think it's possible.
Well, and you're doing it with full transparency throughout your development.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to make it even better is like, you're willing to make this project. You're doing it under full community transparency. We're hiding nothing, and you're willing to and counting on the community actually giving you the feedback to make it the best possible. So as long as everyone's honest,
built with the community for the community.
Holy crap! You guys are sitting on a lot of potential.
Yeah, I'm excited. I got to try this one after when the early access is out.
Excited for the GDC folks.
Yeah, I cannot wait to hear the thoughts from people at GDC. If you're going to GDC, you don't have this on your schedule yet, definitely book
if
the
not,
slots
jump in
for
VRAL booth. The VRAL booth.
Yes, the VRAL, a must
Be a
play.
good place
if you're
to
asking
hang out.
me.
Yeah.
So thank all three of you. You guys were awesome.
Cool.
I don't think this is the last time we're gonna have Nicholas and Shephard on.
No,
after
after the dust settles and it comes out.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to have them back on.
Yep.
We'll have to try it, get our thoughts, and I think we can talk for hours.
Hopefully
on
we
that.
see some palm trees in the background.
Yeah,
We
hopefully
get
they're
them back,
crushing it. Yeah. So thank you three. You all were awesome. Like I said, I cannot wait to hear more thoughts from people at GDC.
Love
like I said,
the enthusiasm.
love it. Love the passion. Like I said, oozing passion on this one.
Thank you so much, guys. We are so appreciative of you, everything you guys do to keep the industry alive, and bringing all of these amazing devs to the limelight. So thank you so much. I know it takes a lot of focus. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate what publishers like VRAL Games do for the industry, and developers.
Everybody's got to believe in everyone.
Like Nicholas and Shephard and Evan that make this idea like this a reality. So cannot wait till this is in our hands. Now I'm just you wanted to try it before, and now I
was bitching.
Yeah, you were like
full exposure.
You were like,
full
I don't like doing
exposure.
interviews without trying the game.
Like I haven't tried it. You want me to go out there and say something's going to be good? I mean, what are we doing here? I want to try it.
Like, you don't got to
I'm
say it's good.
exaggerating
You don't know.
but
We'll fix that.
No, you
We'll
both
fix
did
that.
a great job
We'll fix
because I walk away wanting to try it more than probably if I had
That's always the goal with the interviews too.
If you sell me on it, then I feel even better about it.
Yeah. So thank you all, and to the listeners, go join that Exoshock Discord to stay up to date with the latest and greatest with there. And cannot wait to hear the news from GDC.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Awesome. Ciao, ciao.